CNN leaving Facebook in Australia. Have you heard about this?
No, not too much. If you want to walk me through it.
So I'm going to try and find the actual court case that led to this, um, but it was here we go. It was the Dylan Voller who took a case to court that essentially made the courts decide whether media organizations should be liable for comments left on their Facebook pages. This all happened back in 2016 after a TV expose on the mistreatment of minors in the criminal detention system showed a photo of Dylan Voller hooded and strapped to a chair when he was only 17. That photo was used for their articles of various media outlets posted on Facebook, etc. And then commenters falsely accused the victim in this photo or the subject of this photo of serious crimes such as raping an elderly woman, which is huge. Obviously, not the kind of thing that you just want to be throwing around. Um, but what essentially happened out of that was that it was taken to court. He took it to court and saying that these media organizations are responsible for defamation, amongst a bunch of things, and the courts agreed with him that these platforms are responsible for the comments that are then played. So the the outlets are responsible for the comments placed on these platforms, and the platforms aren't responsible for the comments. It's a can of worms, I think, because it then comes down to, okay, who's responsible for this thing, who's enabling what, where do you draw the line, so on and so forth. Because I think you get there's a bit of an old school reference, but phone numbers written in toilet stalls. Are we then making the people who constructed the toilet responsible for the phone number being handed out? You know, I know it's a like arguably a very different example, but it's I guess what I'm trying to bring up is who's the enabler in this instance, who then becomes responsible because is it the company that manufactured the permanent marker in that example? Is it Facebook in
Hmm.
this example?
I think social media, it's a very difficult thing to compare to other life situations because it's a very unique environment. And I think when it comes to figuring out who's responsible for some of these things, I personally really like, I agree with this court case and sort of the outcome of it, in that if you're a media organization and you're putting a story out that could be, the subject matter could sort of be a bit, what's the word? Polarizing, or people are going to have opinions on whatever the subject matter
Not
is.
not black or white. It's going to be
Yeah,
grey at best in a lot of instances.
exactly. And of course, you've got the comment system there where people are going to be saying their piece. And I think it really is on the media organizations to sort of monitor what's going on and the story that they've put out there and the content that they've brought up as an issue or as a subject, to sort of say, this comment's not okay, this is racist or derogatory or whatever it is, and be in control of that. Because I think something like Facebook, that's, I just don't know, it's their responsibility. They're providing the platform, but when it comes to the media organizations, they're the ones saying, hey, here's a story to think about and discuss and whatever. But, we're not going to have responsibility of what you say about it from that point. That just
Well,
doesn't quite line up with me.
two questions there though. One, what happens when it's not so black and white? Like when the comment is more like defamation or calling someone, say, ugly. Like who do you decide? Like who's to decide? Okay, you know where you cannot say this in the comments, and then at what point does a comment section then become just more or less pointless because no one can provide their opinion? So that's one sort of, I guess, retort to that. And then the other is, shouldn't Facebook just let you not allow comments? Like YouTube does that. YouTube lets you upload a video and disable comments.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to like not having an opinion, I don't think that's the case. It's more a case of don't be racist or harmful, essentially. So you can still have an opinion, you can still say your things, but if it is harming other people, that's where the media organizations need to step in. And like all of the media organizations forever have had codes of ethics that they need to operate by, and they'll understand that pretty well. And I think it's, there is sometimes when there is like the gray area where it can be a bit difficult to distinguish between, real ethical issues or sort of, yeah, it can be a gray area. Sometimes I get that, but I think in most cases, the media organization should be able to identify that's not just an opinion at this point. Like that's a harmful comment. We need to sort this out.
Doesn't that see that'll require a lot more staff though, because I would assume per like big news article, it would probably take 5 times the effort to monitor the comments on that news article than it took to push that news article out there. I think you could have one journalist and an editor look through it and then push it out to the public. Maybe a photographer, 3 people, but reading then through say 1,000 comments and deciding which one, what's what. um, I think it's just easier to allow someone to disable comments, allow a media organization. YouTube does it. It annoys me because there are instances where I see relevant or current information being pushed out, and I just want to go see what the general feeling around that topic is, and comments are disabled for better or worse. I think ABC in Australia, we were just talking about ABC US, but ABC in Australia, which is a government media organization or government funded media, public funded media organization, disables comments on a lot of their media and their news articles. I just feel like that's the easiest way, because otherwise you go down the road of media organizations that lean one way or the other, just deleting comments. And then, okay, if your comment gets deleted, do you then get the opportunity to go back and question why it was deleted, and just creates this, trap of conversations around stuff. And then I would argue for most people, it's just easier not to have a comment section.
Yeah. I mean, I think in this kind of situation, when it comes to involving the law and things like that, it's more an issue of if you've got an article and every comment or like a large group of comments are problematic. I think it's more about like the general sentiment. I think, if you've got one comment from one person that comes through, I don't believe you can be responsible for that as a media organization. But when it's like a very like
It's
widely,
clearly going in one
yeah,
direction, and
it,
it's yes,
yeah,
yeah.
it makes me think of the Taylor Harris photo. So the AFL women's footballer who had that photograph of her kicking this incredible footy, leg up in the air. It was amazing. I think it was 7 News that posted the photo, and comments that came through were just vile and sexist. And then they got to the point where they just deleted the photo and then had to put out another post where I think they sort of apologized for what those people were saying and really condemned that
The
general
actions.
sentiment that had come through. Obviously, if it was just one or two commenters that came through and said some bad stuff, wouldn't have been as big of an issue. But because it was so significant, that's when they had to step in. And I think it's more situations like that where there's more, not so much overwhelming, but more significant of a group of people who are commenting these horrible things that they need to be held accountable versus just like one or two people, because you can't control those one or two people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do wonder, like CNN's quite a big media organization, but I wonder if they even ran the numbers and sort of said, okay, so we need to monitor our presence in Australia, but does that actually make a business case for them? Does it make business sense? It probably doesn't, because I don't think CNN's big. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, CNN's huge, so they might be getting a significant amount of revenue from Australia, but I'd be very surprised if that is the case. And so they
Yeah.
just looked at it and sort of said, because media organizations these days have presence in every city, every country, because I mean, you can just run the same operation out of your US headquarters and have all these specific pages around, and have one person working within that country, and yet have a greatly, I guess, well, much bigger presence within that nation, despite not having the actual physical presence in that nation. And maybe maybe that's a good thing, that organizations that don't actually have a presence in a nation's market, don't then get to manipulate. Well, I think media manipulates, or at the very least, has a certain bias and pushes out information with that bias. Maybe if CNN doesn't have the presence here, and therefore I think doesn't have um, as much of an interest in maintaining a balanced opinion and in maintaining decorum within Australia, because no one's going to be affected. I mean, they might have one staff member here. That then, well, it's their call. It doesn't make sense. Get out of here. If you're going to be here, staff it up and, step it up. You can't just make money out of a country or a people and not invest into that past just pushing the same news article just branded to a different nation's URL or Facebook page.
Yeah, very true. I don't blame them for leaving. I think it makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, I would argue that there are too many news channels out here. Well, out there in general, for
Mm,
in Australia for 25 million people. I mean, how many
yeah,
just how many Australian media channels are there, let alone the Al Jazeera, CNN, BBCs of this world that also focus in Australia. There's It's fantastic to have differing opinions, but when when they all don't have the same buy-in into a nation or into a demographic, I think that then leads to them doing questionable things because they don't have to face the repercussions.